Welcome to our discussion today on the benefits of the multi-layered teaching network in online veterinary science education. When you think about your teaching teams, what makes them thrive and what things do they struggle with? I'm Audry Wieman, and I'm a veterinarian with the College of Veterinary Medicine at the University of Illinois iLearning Center. And today I would like to share our experience with integrating a multi-layer instructional team to build an innovative and adaptive online graduate program in veterinary science. A recent graduate shared this quote about her experience in the program. This program isn't just about acquiring knowledge. It's about discovering new perspectives, challenging assumptions, and unlocking your potential as a veterinary professional. Her insight highlights the heart of our program at the University of Illinois, a relational educational experience. And our goal is to make our teaching team a part of the pedagogy as a living model for students to help develop their own professional networks and ideas. So to show you the benefits of the multi-layering teacher network, first we will be showing you what makes our team and our program effective. And so that includes the context of the program, which is really the people. And these are broken down into multi-layers, non-hierarchical, and just a different way of looking and thinking about the groups of individuals that come in and contribute to our program. So at in the blue is our academic educators and staff who provide the scaffolding for delivering and assessing the quality of knowledge transfer to the students. So these are really the heart of helping us make sure that the program is effective, it's delivered in a fashion that allows the students accessibility to it, and provide us with the guidance that we need in making sure that we're transferring knowledge from us to the students who join in the program, right, on all the technical levels. So with those, we then also have the practicing clinicians who work remotely, and then they bring the fusion of the application of theory into their daily experiences, and they bring that to our network in order to share their perspectives as well. One of my favorite parts of our multi-layering teacher network, though, is our preclinical veterinary student leaders. And also we have some master's graduates that are coming back and helping in the program as well as part of our network. And they're really the ones who run the live sessions and forge those vital connections with our program students, so the master's students in the program when they are facilitating the live sessions and the live discussions when we use our case-based learning materials. So they are a lot of fun to work with, and they have so many great ideas, and they're really important in being able to make that connection and near peer discussion with the master students so that we can get a feel for how the program is running and what are some of the challenges that our students are facing. So, and then finally, we have our guest lecturers who we engage to bring things like research materials to life and showing that innovative and iterative and adaptive sort of use of knowledge and the different ways that it can be applied out there, both in industry and research and in all the different facets in which veterinary science can be used. So we're very fortunate to have those people as well, because even with the different groups of contributors that we have, the conversations flow openly because everyone is an expert at something and everyone is a novice at something. And so the interactions between the groups and within the groups allow for the connections of common themes that we might see or common challenges. And then from all the different perspectives and experiences that we have, we create new understandings and potentially new solutions to those things that we've been talking about. And so thinking about that, how do we develop and how do we create those open types of conversations? And so when we are looking at that, we think about how we have a shared vision that creates our set of values that we use for our programmatic and our individual mastery goals. And so at the University of Illinois Masters of Vet Science program, we believe in building adaptable lifelong learners. And so students that can, once they enter whatever their chosen profession in the tangent of veterinary science is, they can follow along with being lifelong learners and being adaptable and flexible. And so you can see that in these values that we've created as part of the core of our program. And those would be holistic understanding, comprehending key systems, right? Information management, how do we gather, evaluate, and use information effectively? Adaptive thinking, applying iterative thinking to problem solving, practical solutions, so generating actionable recommendations, things that we can actually use in whatever field that our students are interested in engaging with. And really also two very big ones are cooperative engagement, being able to work effectively and flexibly with other people, and also network developing. So building your own plexus for personal and professional success that our students are looking for. So the key to holding these values is really to operationalize them in our network, right? What does it look like? Using them to explore how we interweave these values in our course and in our conversations with each other and also with the students. So how do we represent these things to our students becomes a large part of our multi-layered teaching network. And so these values that we just talked about really form the groundwork for collaboration from our dispersed and decentralized network, right? We have our academics who are generally on campus at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. We also have our veterinary students who are on campus but might be in a different section. We have our guest lecturers who are remote, and then we also have our practicing clinicians who are also remote as well. So they come from different areas of the country. So how do we take those values, right, and have those open discussions? And really the core part of that is that mutual trust is our cornerstone, right? And so when we say mutual trust, we're not talking about meeting deadlines, building agendas. I mean, it's an important part, but it's not the cornerstone part of mutual trust. And so our mutual trust is really about, are we supporting each other's growth? Are we communicating with clarity and honesty? How are we giving our feedback? What is the intention behind that feedback? And then demonstrating the dependability of our character. What kind of responses are we going to give? How are we going to approach challenges? What kind of mindset are we going to take forward when we have conversations, both fun, collaborative, and also challenging ones with each other, when we're looking at the overall development of ourselves personally, professionally, and then also as a program as well. So when we do this, trust isn't earned through transactions and checklists, right? It's earned through the building of these relationships. And that is pretty much, in our case, how our network was first established. So it was established on conversations with each other, meeting each other in different aspects. So some of this would have been on campus for a lot of our educators. Other aspects of this would have been at continuing education meetings. We've met online. We've met and discussed things as interesting as veterinary school applications and also as interesting as English Premier League soccer, right? And through these interactions, consistently, we've been demonstrating these core set of values and this shared vision of how we think that veterinary science graduates can be successful and excel in the areas of their life that they're interested in. And so what it really comes down to is having a commitment to each other's personal and professional growth when we're thinking about mutual trust. So, and to demonstrate how those relationships evolved into this mentorship, sort of dynamic mentorship capacity. Having those conversations, having that back and forth, and knowing that other people have your best interest in mind as far as what you're interested in, but also how you're interested in contributing to the program, has really organically evolved into a reciprocal mentorship, right? And what I mean by that is where the mentor and the mentee is established by the topic of interest rather than a rank or a stage in a career or anything along those lines. And as you can see, this diagram gives you an idea of how those conversations develop and grow, right? So from the initial engagement, which might be something very informal, you're just having a conversation with an individual, and it leads to maybe one individual knowing a little bit more about a topic or wanting to guide someone on a challenge that they're having or even something that they're newly interested in, right? And so providing a little bit of expertise, right? Not inundating, but just providing a little bit of insight into what might make something interesting. And when this happens, a lot of times the mentee shows enthusiasm, right? When you have somebody else that thinks something is really interesting or really cool, they present that and they communicate that on a different level, which leads to new insight. And those fresh perspectives are so important. This interaction is so important in developing the idea that you guys both want to learn something new about a common topic, right? And it builds that mutual growth. And when you have that enthusiasm and that curiosity, that just evolves into sort of this, okay, how do we collaborate to create something out of what we've just discovered, what we think is really interesting, what is something we would love to try and experiment with. And that just builds such an empowered partnership between, first, it might be two people, but it might also be like 3 or 4 or one individual with a group of others as well. And then instead of just being one person giving information to others, it becomes this conversation and this very dynamic back and forth about all the different aspects of maybe just this nidus of information that's part of the original conversation. And so it has become a really interesting, that's why I say that agendas may not be our strongest point. We do have them, but they're not our strongest point because it just injects such a layer of being able to collaborate and create something new that some of those more static definitions go out the window a little bit. But one of the great representations and great examples of this reciprocity came from one of our clinical instructors, Dr. Doreen Vaughn, who is a clinical instructor in the vet school. So she sees our vet student leaders as veterinary students, right? So she's the instructor and they're the students. And then she comes to the online program and she works with these veterinary students as a same level pod leader. And so her comment was, being an instructor for veterinary students, I haven't minded being a pod leader on the same level as those vet students, or we call them SBLs. I have taken some of their suggestions and used their techniques in managing my own pod. In that, I'm reminded to stay humble and to not forget about the perspectives of students. So not just the perspectives of our vet student leaders, but also when she takes that back to her clinical instruction and she gets to work with other veterinary students as well, right? And what that does is it just creates this idea of sustained motivation, right? This idea that you can see how this model is so important to making what you think you know a little bit different, a little bit fresh, and a little bit more curious about how things, these interactions could build in an educator's capacity. So now that we've kind of pulled back the curtains on how our multi-layered teaching network thrives, I want to show you some of the benefits that have come from some of these collaborations and innovations, right? The transformations that we've made that make our online program so engaged and unique and getting good feedback from those people that take part in it, both students, but also the people that come in as part of our teaching network as well. And so this is our innovation through collaboration, where we create things that benefit our graduate students. And so what you're seeing are screenshots of a Google Form escape room that another practicing clinician and I were determined to create based on a real case that she saw about an Arctic fox. And so this started as her case, and we talked about it, and I was so interested in it because it's an Arctic fox, and which is kind of like a dog, but different and has different things. And so we discussed the case as you would, and then we thought this would be a really great thing for our students to experience. And so when we did this, we storyboarded out some questions that were related to the material and the content that we were using. And then once we had our storyboard, we could put that into Google Forms. We could ask the types of questions we would want to ask, or the ones that we wanted them to consider. And if they were able to select the correct ones, they could move forward through the escape room. If they were unable to select the correct answers, then they were circulated back through much in an escape room format where you couldn't leave. And so we built this out on Google Forms. And then one of my favorite things is AI-generated Fox that my colleague developed to add depth and breadth and engagement to this escape room that we developed. And so students were put into pairs. They didn't know the other individual. They were asked to collaborate and discuss information. They were asked to use what they knew, and they were able to use outside resources in order to work through this escape room as well. So it just gave the students, according to their own responses to what this was like for them as an experience, to be really engaged and to be able to see how these real life scenarios played out, but then also to be able to do it with a colleague. They found both a set of learning efficiency, but also a set of professional development experience to be able to work with an individual on a case like this. So it was a lot of fun for us to do, and it was a lot of fun to see how the students reacted to that as well. Our next example is innovation through collaboration, where our graduate students themselves, but also our vet student leaders were able to bring us a challenge, and we were able to collaborate on that and turn it around and create this, not necessarily an algorithm, it's a very loosely based skill sheet where we had our pod leaders, our veterinary student leaders coming in and saying, we have students who won't answer questions that we ask, they will, or they'll just give us textbook answers that they ask. So there was this problem with trying to get them, the graduate students, to create depth to the questions and the answers that they were giving during our case-based discussions. And so this was just something that we came up with to help our graduate students. Okay, how would we respond to it? What are the values that we have, and how can we demonstrate that to our veterinary student leaders so they can pass that on to our graduate students? And so you can see that we kind of broke it down into, what are we really understanding about what's happening? Can a student not identify a problem, or are they just unaware that they're not identifying a certain type of problem? And so we took that and we broke that down, and then we put that into different ways that the pod leaders, our small group discussion leaders, could both identify in class while the graduate students were talking, but also have feedback for them that would help build that breadth and depth to the conversation that they were really looking for. So it's not an algorithm, it's not anything where they specifically have to follow it. It was just an idea of like, hey, we've all heard this, and this is one of those things that we were like, okay, if we hear this, this is kind of what we tend to think is happening, and this is how we think we can best help our students. And then we would get feedback and iterate that skill sheet based on the things that our veterinary student leaders were telling us about whether or not it was effective or not. And so it was, again, something really interesting to make. It was thinking about communication more than veterinary science, but the importance of communication in veterinary science is often understated, but it's something that we do talk about a lot, is how do we help build, right, these networks for our vet student leaders and for our graduate students when they step out into practice or whatever they choose to do. How do we help them develop these conversations to be able to identify problems, like the real problem, the problem beneath the problem, as opposed to just hearing like the surface level information that they're getting. So this was a great example of that. Our next is, this is one of my favorite slides, innovation through collaboration, where we're unlocking professional development through personal mastery. So this is one of our original veterinary student leaders, and Justin was phenomenal. He's graduated vet school, so he's no longer with our program, but he ran into me for the first time. We'd never met. We ran into each other at a national conference where he was receiving an award for all of the things that he did during vet school, not just for our online program, but all the things that he worked really hard to do. So it was actually a lot of fun to be able to interact with him and appreciate all the things that he did to help develop the veterinary student leader program within our online network. And he picked me out of a crowd. We'd never met, and he came right over and we started having a conversation just like we would online. And so it was really fantastic to see that, and it was a lot of fun to be there to celebrate all of his dedication and hard work as he stepped into the professional world. So And then we started this presentation with a graduate student's perspective of the transformational experience that goes along with being a part of the master's program. So this is an innovation through collaboration that creates a helical bloom of team values and vision. And when I say that, this is a demonstration of how our students, our veterinary student leaders or student pod leaders, found the experience to change what it is that they had interpreted and expected about being a part of the program. And their words were, I have never found myself in a mentorship role similar to this before. And I was nervous that I would not be able to fulfill it at the beginning. I learned that part of being a mentor is just being open and available to any questions and concerns. By being able to admit that I did not know something, they were more comfortable opening up to me. And so you can see those values of building networks, cooperatively working, creating practical solutions, right? She wasn't sure how to do it, but a practical solution was just being open and available to questions and concerns, and being able to create those adaptable environments where we could have the graduate students as well feel like they can contribute in a way, even if they didn't know something. And so that becomes really important to us. And this veterinary student pod leader is a great example of that. And so when we look at that, we're going to circle back to innovation through collaboration and personal growth. So again, when we look at our online program, we're really thinking about transformational growth and adaptive, lifelong learner. And so a couple of our recent Masters of Veterinary Science graduates shared their perspectives on what this meant for them. And so it says, I cannot say enough great things about all the staff and professors I had the privilege of working with. Their kindness, understanding, and exemplary mentorship have left an indelible mark on my educational journey. And so the idea that they are engaging with the staff and professors, right? That they got to work with the staff and professors as opposed to just receiving information and saying, I got a lot of knowledge out of this, but instead they had this experience of exemplary mentorship, and it created an educational journey for them. Really highlights those things that through our work as a multi-layered teaching network, we're able to not only do, but also show for our master's graduates as well. And the final quote is, it's an incredible balance of being challenging and supporting of the student that I believe the majority of the Masters of Veterinary Science program faculty and staff have mastered. And while it's really nice to think that we've mastered something, you can see that this is just part of our growth process, right? We're always taking this sort of information and thinking, are we challenging the students enough? Are we supporting the students enough? How are we using our values to do those things? And how do we do that in a way that really helps them grow as an individual so that they can have the type of professional success that they're hoping for, as well as personal success in their lives? So I really appreciate you listening today. I wanted to close with this slide of our iLearning Center staff, as well as our veterinary student and pod leaders, our returning master's student who had such a big impact on the program when she was in it, that we are so thrilled that she was able to come back and be a part of our facilitation process at this point. And these are the people who I'm really grateful for, to have the opportunity to work with, to have fun, to collaborate, to just dream and vision and create visions, and then also bring those things to life, right? So part of collaboration is actually executing the dream or the vision. And I feel like these people are just exemplary versions of how to bring dreams to life. And I'm very thrilled to be able to work with them. So at this time, I will be happy to answer any questions about my presentation or about our program. And thank you for being here today.